FPUC got into the third stimulus package bill. It's at $400 a week from March to August. But how do you get FPUC? What is PUC? What is PUA? And what is UI? How do you do escalated benefits? And how do you certify for benefits? In this throwback video, I explain how you get all these things and how you get to the finish line on unemployment benefits. The Hot Mess Express could not reach the station, but was FPUC the culprit or something else? Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is LA Late. This is Afternoons LA Late. Hope you're great and safe. We made it to the weekend. It's 4 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, 4:30 Pacific Standard Time. Always for our FPUC video. Afternoons LA Late starts at 3:30 with the check, then hazard pay, and ends with rent assistance at 5 o'clock. Big news about FPUC minutes ago. As people wonder if FPUC is what killed the negotiations for the second stimulus check, as they appear as though they're killed, but more about that in a second, or was it something entirely else? Next was also that jobs report today a misnomer, or was it really a buzzkill as well? Let me go right to the details. FPUC appears to have not been the cause of why the negotiations could not be reached. Rather, it appears to be the cause of why bad reporters continually do bad reporting. Broadcast news through its entire environment was involved with a stimulus check coverage, but when it came to the broadcast reporters for television, they really could only default to one story: FPUC. They would not talk about hazard pay and all the other provisions of the bill, making it seem like FPUC was the culprit and the problem for everything. But it wasn't. The Republicans and the Democrats both confirmed that they would agree to $600 a week. The Republicans offered $600 last week. Both from the president offered $600 a week, and Nancy Pelosi offered $600 a week. What they couldn't agree upon is how many weeks. The president offered $600 for 1 week. Nancy said, no, what the hell is 1 week? Come on now. She said $600 all the way to January 2021. Then the Republicans came back and said, well, we don't know that the economy will warrant problems or will manifest problems economically all the way to January 2021. You can't say that. So Nancy came back with a concession. The concession was, okay, $600 provided the unemployment rate doesn't drop, and if it does, we won't have $600 a week. It sounded like an hallelujah moment. It didn't sound like a Hail Mary. It sounded like a great deal. They didn't take it, the Republicans. They appeared to offer $400 a week 2 days ago, but they didn't indicate how many weeks of it. And Nancy Pelosi this morning said that there was no agreement as to durations, and that she offered to try to make the deal by tailoring back the number of weeks of her proposals, but that apparently did not work as well. So was FPUC really the culprit? No. Ironically, the culprit was an issue, part of the bill, that I have been talking about since last week that had nothing to do with FPUC. It was the money to the states. The Democratic proposal was $3 trillion more, was $3 trillion in total. The Republicans' proposal was $1 trillion. The CARES Act, the first stimulus package, was $2 trillion. And the president had wanted this to land at about $2 trillion initially, then pulled it back to maybe $1.5 trillion. Yesterday, Mitch McConnell said that the two parties were apart by $1 trillion. So that was progress. They went from a $2 trillion separation to $1 trillion. And this morning, when appearing out from negotiations with Mitch and Nancy and Chuck and Stevie and Mark, Mitch was not there. Nancy said, hey, we're now a couple $100 billion apart. Well, wow, that's progress, LA Late. I mean, they've gone from $1 trillion apart to a couple $100 billion. What's holding it up? Here it is. The issue was the funding to states. That appears to have been what really has caused the implosion of the negotiations, not FPUC, as broadcast news wants to tell you. Nancy, in a letter she sent to her colleagues Friday, which are basically her fellow party members in the House and Senate, explained why she could not reach an agreement and what were the areas of disagreement. So she basically briefed everyone on it, or debriefed them, whatever the expression is. She said that they had offered $915 billion, 915, for state and municipalities, and the Republicans had only offered $150 billion. There you go. That's almost $800 billion apart. In fact, she delineated item by item where the parties were separated apart on. Guess what's not on the list? FPUC. In fact, FPUC seems to have been that sort of, I don't know what the expression is, but that sort of bad character that broadcast news keeps on wanting to point their fingers at, and yet no one in this group continually says that FPUC is really a problem. It appears to be the duration of FPUC. How long are they going to pay FPUC? Now, Nancy said we could tailor back the number of weeks, and what were your comments? Overnight, a few viewers said, I would have taken the deal. I would not have agreed with Nancy. I would have taken the deal because we need some relief right now. Understand, there were two deals in the last 24 hours. The first one, a couple more deals in the last week. The first deal was $600 a week for 1 week, offered by the president last week. That deal was then manifested again, offered by Mnuchin and Meadows by way of the president during the meetings on Tuesday. Again, $600 for 1 week. Now, yeah, we all love $600 for 1 week, but what are we going to do the week after that? And what about those retroactive benefits? We've already missed a week or 2 weeks now. What the hell is 1 week? So Nancy was correct in rejecting an offer of 1 week, but what happened thereafter was apparently there was an offer of $400 per week. But how many weeks? That appears to have been really the telling point. What Nancy and Chuck are not telling us, and Steve and Mark are not telling us as well, is how many weeks on FPUC were the parties apart. I've heard so much over the last week about the number, 600, 200, 400, 100. But how many weeks of benefits were you talking about? It makes me troubled and frustrated, as you see in my eyes, when we have people talking about financial numbers and they won't tell us the entire picture, and they tell us part of the picture. It's like, well, are you intentionally not telling me the whole picture? For example, let me tell you right now, Nancy would have been crazy not to accept $400 a week to January 2021. But I don't know if that was an offer. I really don't know if that was an offer. And the president and the Republicans would have been crazy not to make a deal at $400 all the way to January 2021 if that's what Nancy offered as well. On the other hand, if someone offered $400 for just the month of August and said after September 1, go fly a kite and go figure out how to make rent, of course you're going to go to the mat and say, I'm not accepting PUC for 3 weeks. What are we talking about here? It's that sort of strangeness of what's going on that makes people not happy with the process. What also makes them unhappy about the process is what has been told to them point blank, and then literally minutes later the person says the complete opposite. I don't care if you're a Republican. I don't care if you're a Democrat. I don't care if it came from a member of the cabinet. I don't care if it's a member of Congress. This entire process, as I start to rant, yeah, here comes the rant, get the cup of tea and start to sip because I'm about to pour some tea, has been people not telling the American people the complete, correct story, or not being able to keep their story correctly. Steve Mnuchin 24 hours ago said that he said that he and Nancy made an agreement that they would reach a stimulus package agreement by Friday and would stay and get it done. Today he says he's not going to do that. Today he says, I told her to go home and don't come back to me unless you have a better offer. Now Nancy actually said much the exact same thing. She said, unless you come up with more money, I have nothing else to offer you. But said she's willing to continue to negotiate. And then there's Mitch. Mitch said he's going to keep House in session until they get this done, and no one's going to go home from D.C. They're going to stay there and get it done. He now said they can all go home until the Democrats come up with a better deal. Don't go home. I don't need you here. I'll call you if I need you here. I have to understand that we're paying these people their salaries. We're paying these people their we're paying them the money that goes to their regional offices back in their state where they're going back to on Monday to try to campaign and reelect themselves. We pay them to do all these things, and what have they done for us? Bicker. And ultimately, as we sit here today, what's going to happen? Well, jobless claims. Let me get to that number because jobs numbers, not jobless claims numbers. Because a lot of people were asking me about this. I knew you were, and I really don't care what the jobs numbers was. It was good. It was better. It was not great, and I'm not spinning the number as well. Every month there's a new jobs number that shows how many more jobs were created over the month before. I had told you last month, I was like, there comes Al with those predictions. There he comes, that kid with the purple shirt of those predictions. I said, hey, they're going to come out with jobs numbers right around when they're negotiating the deal, and the Republicans are going to say the jobs numbers are so great, we're not paying FPUC. They didn't do it, but the jobs numbers did come out, and they were better than the month before. But they're not good enough, and they also don't support anything that is FPUC related. FPUC is unemployment. It goes on top of PUA and UI. And FPUC is tied to the unemployment number, which is released every Thursday. You know that because I've been with you, and I've been educating you, and we've been learning this together. Unemployment numbers are released every Thursday. And that's what's important, not the employment number, because the jobs numbers includes temporary jobs, part-time jobs, pickup jobs, side jobs. It's not necessarily the job you had before. And so as Kevin O'Leary says, it also includes zombie jobs. You can get a job that week or that month, and the job is gone the next month. So it doesn't mean that that's a full-time job or a long-time job. It's just a job you had. That's what this jobs numbers is. And it's not a good number. Does not show recovery from back to March. It doesn't show recovery back to 2029. It just shows improvement, but it doesn't warrant anything. So where are we? Where we are is viewers like Amy, who dropped me a DM in the private just a few minutes ago. She says, I'm getting $167 a week now for unemployment. That's not going to cut it. Or $169. That's not going to cut it. I need that $600 more per week. I can't do anything with $167 a week. It's that sort of problem we're at. Ultimately, FPUC was not the problem of why the second stimulus package deal did not get done. Ultimately, the big issue will be when it comes to FPUC is what happened to the Republican offers that simply went from nothing to maybe $400, and was it too little too late? And had they come in higher, would Nancy and Chuck been in a better position to take something? Or were Nancy and Chuck holding out for too much too late? This channel had reported before the Republicans made their offer that they would likely have to come in at about $300 to $400 a week for several months of FPUC, that anything other than that would not get support, and would not get support of Republicans. Ultimately, they did not do that. They came in at $200 a week under the HEALS Act, and that got universally panned. Republican-led states, swing states, Republican states where the governors are Republican, and key states that the presidential candidates have to win this fall all came out and said, we don't support $200 a week. It was a universal pan across the table. Ironically, had they had offered $400 a week, would those key states have said, yes, we support $400 a week? I think they would have. I had reported that $300 to $400 a week for several months seemed to be the likely better offer. But Mnuchin continued to claim that the economic data did not support $600 a week, and that he wanted to give less than your full unemployment benefits to sustain you during the pandemic. That was also not supported by economic data. There was no data out there that said paying people less than their full unemployment benefits was stimulus, that ensured that they would return back to work, and that would curb any activity by people trying to stay at home. Ultimately, even the Chicago Fed issued a report that said giving people their full stimulus gives more indication for them to head back to work, and that there was no indications that people were staying home and not taking a real job to collect FPUC. Viewers dropped in the comments they knew people who had stayed at home to collect FPUC and were making more money, but that those viewers were not employed or given offers of employment. They simply were unemployed and certainly were making more money than had they been employed before. But the big concern was, how about those people who simply had no job to go back to? Ultimately, what will happen in the long run is people will remember the disparagement of the American worker during these last few weeks, where Mitch McConnell said to you, point blank, that you were staying at home trying to get rich off the American dollar, that you were creating a welfare state, that you had jobs to go back to, that the American economy was roaring on five engines and going down the tracks in full steam when it was not, and that there was not enough economic data to support ever giving unemployment benefits again from the federal government. Even yesterday, Mitch McConnell had that remark again. He said, I don't have enough economic data to do stuff now. And Nancy Pelosi ultimately was right about one thing. There was no sense of urgency from Mitch McConnell, who ultimately it's his Senate to approve it. The president this week and last week said he wants to do an executive order for FPUC, which means there's an emergency. But Mitch McConnell, who leads the Senate, said that there was no urgency. He said, I'll get to this in a couple of weeks, he said last week. Yesterday, he said, maybe we'll have a deal in a few weeks from now. I don't really see this as an urgent issue. When I see more economic data, I'll address it then. And then there was this. A new report that came out this morning said the richest city, well, the city that had the highest growth of employment, not unemployment, but employment, this year, during the pandemic, after the pandemic, compared to pre-pandemic numbers and 2019 numbers, was where else? In Kentucky. It tells you, or makes you cause you to think, was the guy so much against FPUC conditioned to it due to the successes of his own state for whatever reasons. Coming up next is rent eviction. Boy, that is the one thing that there is that glimmer of hope that maybe we'll get an executive order over the weekend to prevent evictions. The president can do it. So please go to the subscribe button and the alert button on the Funniest channel so you get an alert when a new video goes live. And especially, I'll give you an alert if an eviction moratorium is issued by executive order. As always, stay motivated, stay inspired, stay positive, and stay up LA for more.